Well, welcome back. As you can see, we're in the same setting. We are filming Reimagining Leadership Part 3. The desire here, like the sons of Issachar, is to discern the times. What kind of leadership do we need to offer our communities at this time? And then what kind of leaders do we need to choose? Different times we may need a more pastoral, a more comforting, a more faithful, solid, stable leadership type. And other times it need to be way more prophetic and challenging and stirring and faith-building and full of adventure and risk-taking and all of those pieces. We cannot assume that there is a one-size-fits-all leadership reality. We just cannot. I've had to reinvent myself a few times. I'm a boomer. I've loved the 90s when it was kind of our heyday. It was fun, it was exciting, but we're not in the 90s anymore. And so our leadership has to evolve, and we have to reconsider some of the big leadership conversations. And no more so than as we face the COVID challenge that seemingly is not going away anytime soon. I was driving here from my house and just listening to the news quickly, and there's this surge of COVID cases across America, and I know it's true in other parts of the world as well. New Zealand, you guys were pretty much done, and then voila, another wave or two, people suddenly being faced with COVID, and Australia, and so on. So I want to talk a little bit today around the idea of reimagining leadership through prophetic curiosity. When I was a kid, my grandpa had a farm. This was in the, probably 1960s. And from the main road to the farm, there was just this little dual-laned track. Very unsophisticated. It was super fun, kind of driving on it when it was dry. But when it was wet, it got all mushy, got all muddy. And I enjoyed my dad kind of negotiating it in the rain as the wheels slid and slipped and slushed their way through the different stresses and struts that those two lanes offered. And in many ways, that kind of reminds me of what happens if we're not intentionally considering which track we should be on. We just slip and slide into old ways. They're known, they're predictable, they're safe. And instead of being prophetically curious, and that's the idea I want to leak into us today. How can we remain prophetically curious? Einstein said, curiosity exists for a reason. There's a reason why. The exact quote is, the important thing is not stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. What a great quote, and what a great idea. I was probably around 28 to 30 is my guess. And I was sitting in my study in Durban. We were leading Glenridge at the time. And I felt the Spirit of God say to me, I want to teach you to read Scripture differently. And as always, my prophetic curiosity surged. And I thought, well, I know how to read the Bible as a son of God, as a husband, as a dad, as a pastor. But is there another way I can read it? Is there something that I don't see? And I was mulling over that recently, and then stumbled onto a little YouTube video called The Inattention Perception, I think it is. I'll see it in just a moment. And what they did was they got two street basketball teams. One was wearing a darker sweater, one a lighter sweater. And the narrator said, how many passes do the white team complete? Now, this is my moment. I am fully into this, and I watch with keen intention. 1, 2, 3, 4, as they kind of interplay and pass the ball around. At the end, the video stops, and the narrator says 13, and I'm honestly stoked. This is a moment of competition, and I've won, I'm a winner. And then he said this, did you see the moonwalking bear? And I'm like, you're crazy. What moonwalking bear? They rewinded, played in slow motion, and lo and behold, right there, in the middle of it all, here comes this man dressed up as a bear, moonwalking. See, inattention blindness, that's the phrase I was looking for. Happens when our eyes are focused on something else. We miss what's obviously in front of us. When you see it, as we did, you can't believe you missed it. which we did. Now, prophetic curiosity fundamentally is the same idea. So back to my story, I sit at my desk in my study, I take my glasses off, I put another pair on, and I said, all right, Lord, now will you teach me? Will you teach me? What does it mean to read the Bible apostolically? Go to Genesis chapter 1, good place to start. In the beginning, God created, and of course, I'm absolutely mesmerized by the download of God introducing himself as the creator. And I make a commitment that day, the churches I lead will never become boring, predictable, ritualistic. Because if I want to reflect the eternal living God, how can I do things the same way over and over again and say I'm representing God well? But the second thing I read was in Genesis 1:28. It says, increase, multiply, fill the earth. And I realized the gospel is a phenomenal adventure. It's there for the taking. It's not a passive place of absorption of knowledge and information. It is this curious adventure full of uncertainty and vulnerability and unpredictability. And it's into that place that God invites me. Now, can you see how they're two very different stories requiring two very different leadership patterns? I woke up this morning to an email from a young South African, and he says to me, do you mind if we connect? And he goes on to say, he said, I have been trying to find a spiritual home, and all that I find, it doesn't seem like there's a malicious bone in his body. But he says, all that I find is churches that do things the same way with ritual and repetition. And I think there's something more. I feel like there's something else God has for me. And the younger generation, my dear friend, are desperate for an adventure, are desperate for stepping out of the boat, getting into an adventure that is uncontrollable and unpredictable and beyond us. Prophetically curious requires us to be men and women who view the gospel differently. Now, there are 4 questions that we wrestle with whenever we are processing any protocol or practice. Number 1, is it biblically necessary? We percolate it through the grid of the Bible. Is it absolutely necessary in the Bible? Does the Bible describe it or prescribe it? Is it necessary, or is it just an observational curiosity? The second is, what is culturally essential? I loved Sunday wrestling with the Syrophoenician woman and Jesus. It was in part a big cultural moment between Jesus and this woman. Thirdly, what is prophetically compelling? What keeps me moving forward? What keeps my faith growing? What keeps my sense of adventure rich and current? And the unexpected is around every corner. And then what is personally authentic? That is essential in wrestling through this reality. Now, what am I trying to say to you? If we want to reimagine leadership, we have to decide what's its highest value. Is its highest value pastoral care? Then we will lead in a very unique and specific way. If our highest value is teaching in the text, and obviously that's beautiful and important, but if it's our highest value, then truth and truth alone is what really matters at the end of the day. So we end up with these huge teaching halls of correct truth, but somehow an absence of mobility. But what could it look like if we have a leadership that reimagines itself around prophetic curiosity? What is God doing now? Is God on the move? Does God require me to lay something down and pick something up? These are the questions that I think help us reimagine leadership, that it's not a static, one-size-fits-all, timeless reality, but it's way more beautiful, it's way more powerful, and requires significant transformation. God bless you. Thanks for sitting in with us. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.